was a flood, but then there was a dam that basically ruptured. Well, it collapsed. The dam collapsed, and then the amount of rain it was supposed to be, yes, a heavy rain, but the heavy rains were so heavy that the amount of rain it would rain for a whole year rained all that amount in one day, causing two major dams to simply burst and explode because the amount was more than what that dam was designed to handle. They ruptured, they basically exploded, and letting a huge amount of water going into a city called Darna in Libya, killing, and people were basically all of a sudden, they were actually using their phones, just, thinking that it was, oh, just a normal day, an event to watch, an event to capture on social media and so forth. But then what they didn't realize is that the water was rising within minutes. And I was actually calculating in almost in a minute and 24 seconds. The water was flowing at, yes, it was a fast speed, but then all of a sudden, because of the dams exploding, it was basically bringing in massive amounts of water where people were going up to 5 and 6 stories high. And then the whole building was collapsing on the people. People were hanging on to chandeliers, to their cars were starting to swim and float. The houses, even houses, were actually misplaced. The whole house would be carried, misplaced, and actually taken elsewhere. Over 30,000 people died just these past few days. 30,000 people just died just these past few days because what happened? Well, they basically didn't expect this amount of water. The water was coming to them and drowning them within their homes, within their cars. They were driving thinking that they could actually run away from the water, but the water boom just basically pulled them into the ocean, or it was actually the Mediterranean, but it eventually pulled them into the Mediterranean, into the sea, and now they actually all drowned. So now they're picking up bodies and bodies, and many they could not actually retrieve. So this is exactly, and of what are some of the signs of judgment day that are going to happen, in where you will have, this is like al khasf and the kasf and the khasf, and where al khasf bil maghrib and al khasf bil mashriq. What is al khasf? Al khasf, where it would be some kind of a natural disaster. Well, it would be a natural disaster called in our times, but it would be a disaster, an ecological disaster that would cause different different things on the earth to explode, whether it's heavy rains or whether it's heavy or strong earthquakes, just like the ones that are actually happening right now, that happened in Morocco, the one that happened in Turkey recently, and then later on where we were seeing floods in Saudi Arabia, and the list goes on and on. So when we would see such signs, it's just in order to remind us that the earth is actually losing the balance and therefore losing the necessary things to make earth be livable for human beings. So then you will see more floods, more earthquakes, and perhaps more thunderstorms, and perhaps more just really the earth is splitting open. In fact, there is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ actually said that there would be a khasf bil maghrib. There would be like this, this earth or natural disaster on the western side of the middle, Muslim countries or Middle East. And then what happens is that all of a sudden people are like, well, there was a city. The whole city is gone. It just, the earth just gulped it all up. Where did everybody go? How did everybody just disappear? Where did that city go? Where's everyone? How did this happen? While they're just trying to figure out what just happened, on the other side of Mashriq, which is the eastern countries. On the other side, what's going to happen? There would be another similar natural disaster where it's going to be causing the people to be in complete confusion. What is happening to the world? What is happening to earth? So that's why the Prophet ﷺ was actually talking about khasfun bil mashriq, khasfun bil maghrib, and khasfun bi jazirat al arab. So a khasf would be like a natural disaster on the east side, on the west side, and later in the Arabian Peninsula. Just when people are trying to figure things out, that's when there would be a dukhan. What is a dukhan? A dukhan is actually a smoke. But this smoke is going to be so massive that it's going to be where people are going to have troubles breathing, it's kind of like getting a rash or an allergy, some reaction where they're going to start suffocating. They can't breathe anymore. And then you'll have massive people in numbers actually dying because of this natural disaster, in where this is, what is it, dukhan. Now, at the time, people might actually explain it as, oh, it's a natural disaster, and not recognizing that it's not only a natural disaster, but it's actually part of the signs of Judgment Day. And people,
so how are people gonna live?
Good question. So some people will manage to live, and some people, and many people will actually die out. But the most important thing is to recognize, is that people will continue to just explain it as if it's a natural disaster. It's a normal change and nothing to worry about. When in reality, it's actually one of the signs that the Prophet ﷺ had actually foretold us about, in order to let us be aware that the sign or the Judgment Day is near.
So does that mean climate change is a part of Judgment Day?
Climate change is a part of signs of Judgment Day. Absolutely. Climate change is a part of the signs of Judgment Day. And of course, when you look at all those different ecological changes, where even the Prophet ﷺ would talk about how the Arabian Peninsula would actually turn into greenery. In other words, the other places are losing their greenery and water resources and so forth. And then all of a sudden you're seeing greenery on the other side of the world. That is in order to give us an idea of how the climate change is basically giving us the warning of the end of Earth, the end of life on Earth, and therefore getting near to Judgment Day. You want to keep in mind, so if we were to actually put kind of like, what should I call it? Kind of like a graph.
How do you know it's going to be a sign of Judgment Day before the sign?
Fair enough. How do we know that this is a sign of Judgment Day before the sign even happens?
Yeah.
So the Prophet ﷺ, he himself told us and foretold us about that.
But
so that's how we know.
When it's going to happen?
Well, we don't know when it's going to happen, but the Prophet ﷺ told us that these things are going to happen. And that's why they're basically things that the Prophet ﷺ is telling us, well, I'll tell you some of the things that are going to happen, and you just have to recognize that this is part of the signs. One, why is it important to know about the signs of Judgment Day? Number one, the signs of Judgment Day, it's not just, good to know. No, that's not the reason why the Prophet ﷺ told us about the signs of Judgment Day. It's not, well, here's an information for you. The signs of Judgment Day were given to us, number one, in order for people to know some of the things that the Prophet ﷺ foretold us about, in order to know that the Prophet ﷺ was actually given a revelation by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's not inventing this. He's not making this up. Who's giving him this information? It's basically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's basically through Jibreel alayhi salam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's number one. The signs of Judgment Day are to help you know the truth about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's number one. Number two, it's also to tell you that you have to anticipate that there is going to be a day where life is going to end, not only for you, but even for creation and preparing itself to a magnificent and a very dangerous day, which is Day of Judgment. Which is Day of Judgment. Because so here's the thing. Whenever there's an event, the bigger the event, the most critical the event, you will see more and more reminders. Reminder number one, hey, this is happening. Reminder number two, the reminders are really in order to tell you of something dangerous, something magnificent is about to happen. So the Prophet ﷺ was given this information in order to prepare you that there is something outstanding, something magnificent is going to happen, so you better be prepared for it. Number three, some signs of Judgment Day are in order to tell us, be careful, there's something that is going to be a trend. Be careful from following such a trend and becoming part of it. Well, just like how the Prophet ﷺ had actually told us that part of the signs of Judgment Day, you'll have a lot of people committing zina. Part of the signs of Judgment Day, you'll have a lot of people actually stealing. You'll have a lot of people actually leaving their akhlaq and morality. You'll have a lot of people that will engage in haram things. The Prophet ﷺ would tell us all that in order to tell us, listen, that's going to become a trend. Well, just like, listen to this hadith. This hadith is on Sahih al-Bukhari. Listen to this. The Prophet ﷺ said that there's going to come a time where people will actually give fatwa. What about them? Well, they will start claiming that music, that clubs, that zina or boyfriend and girlfriend are actually halal. You'll have people giving such type of fatwas. And the Prophet ﷺ warned us about that. In fact, he even warned us about something similar in where he...
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على السلام حي على السلام حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
What was I saying? Hmm?
There's a hadith in Sahih.
Right. So there is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ actually said, now listen to this one, because this is starting to become like the most fashionable thing, in where the Prophet ﷺ actually said that there's going to come a time where the scholars will actually die out. There's no more ilm. People will just follow what are called the ruwaybida. The Sahaba were confused. So what are a ruwaybida? What is a ruwaybida? And he said, explaining what a ruwaybida are, and he said that they're basically people that are literally trivial people that will take positions of importance to actually speak about crucial matters in people's lives. It's exactly like today, in where you will have people, because they might have who knows, 3 million followers on TikTok or probably 4 million followers on Instagram, they start becoming important figures, even though the guy or the girl is probably just doing this move with their hands. And then they become these important figures. In other words, their trivial behavior starts making of them as if they were important people. And then they'll start getting interviewed on what they think should happen and what they think of morality, and what they start even giving fatwas and their opinions on whether hijab is obligatory or not, or whether feminism or whatever it is, and all these different dangerous topics that these trivial people will start becoming the stars or even the celebrities to take positions to talk about what they're not qualified in whatever way. In fact, they're not even qualified in anything. But that's what the Prophet ﷺ was warning us about during the time of Ruwaybida. Let's remember the word, Ruwaybida. Somebody that is tafe, somebody that is literally very trivial, all of a sudden becoming the important figure, the celebrity that is acting on that behalf or pretending to be the important figure to actually speak on serious matters, probably fatwa, probably Islam, probably politics, probably morality, and the list goes on and on. Now, here's one thing. Just like in this hadith, the Prophet ﷺ was telling us about, we're just learning. Why is it important to know signs of Judgment Day? That's third reason, which is to warn us, don't follow the trend. Be careful. There's going to come a time where this is going to be very common. People are going to consider that such persons or such trend is actually fashionable, is actually cool, or is actually something to embrace. So the Prophet ﷺ is warning us, be careful. There's gonna come a time, don't follow it. Why? Because if you are forewarned, you were given a heads up before, that's in order to give you more caution to not follow such people or such actions or such trend, because it would be a main slippery slope for many to why they would end up being on the other side of their deen. Becomes a slippery slope that takes many out of the deen, takes many out of the right path, and it becomes a common trend. The other part, which is idab. Idab is really interesting. I find it probably one of the most interesting things. Why? Because let me first explain what idab is. So idab, anything that walks on earth is supposed to be called deb. So even the human beings, they can be called deb, but it's usually condescending term or a condescending word, giving a bad connotation to mean like an animal. But a deb, it's a creature that does not actually look like a creature of what we know, but this creature has a different type of power that is different than other creatures. This creature actually recognizes the people that are believers from the people that are not believers. But wait a minute, how is this Deba, this creature, whether this creature is, well, what from the word Deba, we know it's not a sea animal. The girls in the back, get closer. So we would know from the word Deba that this is not a sea animal. And this is an animal that basically walks on ground. We would know that this basically is a creature that, in other words, is living on earth. Is it going to be coming out? Is it going to evolve from another creature? All this information we don't really know. So why don't we know, and why don't we actually find this creature? Well, will this creature all of a sudden just come out? What will this creature actually do? This creature will all of a sudden become a creature amongst us, and they will start stamping people on their foreheads, mu'min and kafir. Mu'min and kafir. And then you will only be identified by either you're a mu'min or you're a kafir. They'll stamp people on your forehead, mu'min, kafir. How does this dabba or this creature, I want you to get closer, honey. Sorry, I can't tolerate people talking in the back, in the back. I absolutely cannot tolerate it. Get closer. Thank you. Or leave. Now, the interesting thing is that when we actually say a creature that is capable of stamping, that means it has some sort of a profile about you. How does it recognize whether that profile about you is a believer or a disbeliever? We don't actually know. But this creature has some profile about you to actually distinguish whether you're a believer or not a believer. At the end of the day, is that this stamp will be the only identification for you. People will stop using names and will actually start using mu'min or kafir. That's really scary to actually talk about the deb in where we all conceal a lot about our profiles. The scariest profile for anyone to reveal is really the profile about who they are and what they are on the inside. That is, whether you're a believer or disbeliever on the inside. That's a scary profile where here it is, this Deborah right there is bang, giving you a stamp on your forehead, a believer or a disbeliever. Now, here's one thing. Because I don't want to go in all the details and talking about all the signs of Judgment Day and go in details about each and every single one, it baffles me because how is it that such a creature doesn't exist right now, can all of a sudden exist in massive numbers and actually live around us? Where's it going to come out from? Is it going to evolve from a different animal? Is it going to come out from underneath the earth? What's going to happen? How is it going to happen? Well, what we just know is that this deva, it doesn't exist now. Or at least we don't know of such a deva now, such a creature now. But there is going to be that creature. And then those are just some of the things, and where people will still see it as, oh, well, yeah, just a normal thing. And again, people will normalize more every single time they come across a certain sign of Judgment Day. They will continue to call it a normalized thing and probably a natural thing, and they'll live with it and just move on. And that's why even when you see the signs of Judgment Day where people will talk to different animals and people will be capable of even speaking to objects, or even the different signs of many women or how people will behave, etc., all of that will become normalized and people will just live it like it's just a normal thing, and they'll just philosophize it differently. Well, on the major signs of Judgment Day, one that is also rather really weird and really scary is a Dajjal. Let's give an idea about a Dajjal. A Dajjal, there are different opinions between scholars on whether he is living today in a remote island or whether he's not living today. There is a hadith where the hadith is narrated by Tamim ad-Dari, where he actually went to this island, and then in this island there was this very hairy creature that eventually took him to this person and asked him whether the trees in the city of Ilbisan continue to grow dates, or whether the Prophet ﷺ had come out, or whether the Lake Tiberias and what actually happened to it. So you're looking at some things that he was asking, and then the Prophet ﷺ later said that was actually Dajjal himself. So is he really living in this remote island somewhere? But whether he is living in this remote island, or whether he is still not even born, the hadith that talk about it, Dajjal, are actually authentic. What does a Dajjal look like? So a Dajjal has physical disabilities. The physical disabilities, one, in where one of his eyes is kind of sticking out. So you could see that it's a physical disability in his eyes. And one of his eyes, it basically is طافئة. So he's got one eye that's blind and another eye that's kind of sticking out. You know, when somebody has, a little bit of their eyes kind of sticking out, it's a deformality. So he's got two deformalities. One of the eyes is kind of closed up like that, and the other one is actually stuck out a little bit, or a lot. The other deformality that he has is bow legs. It's got bow legs. You know what bow legs are? It's when you start lacking vitamin D and when you were basically a baby in your mom's womb, and then you've got this deformality, and that basically makes you bow legs. It's got bow legs. It's got these eyes, and he's got spiky orange hair, kind of like a redneck, huh? Spiky orange hair, and his eye, one of them is actually a green eye. Okay. Now, one thing about a Dajjal is that in the beginning, he will present himself as a person that is trying to bring peace to the world, trying to bring, of course, like a lot of the imposters, trying to present himself like he is just bringing in good to the world. Later on, this so-called good pioneer all of a sudden starts claiming that he's a prophet, and then he starts claiming that he's actually God himself, and then what happens? Well, he's given some miracles. Well, I thought miracles were supposed to be evil things. How is this person actually given miracles? Miracles, what are miracles? Well, anything that is supernatural is, in English, it's called a miracle. In Arabic, it's not necessarily called a miracle. A supernatural thing can be what is called an istidraj, and can be something that is a karama, and can be something that is a mu'jiza. There are differences. Listen to this. A miracle in English just means something that's supernatural. In Arabic, not every supernatural thing is necessarily a miracle. So let's say you're such a good person, and you start getting something that is supernatural. Maybe you made the dua, all of a sudden it happened instantly. It's a supernatural thing. Or maybe something you wanted, all of a sudden you were reading Quran and all of a sudden you start getting light, or something that is supernatural, something that is not explained from a natural way, something that is different. That would be called a karama. Now, the karama that a salih person would get, you cannot use that karama to boast about it, because that's something between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right? You can't get a karama and start using it. Well, I've got a karama right there, and I'll show you, I'll dare you, or I'll challenge you to do something similar. You cannot use the karama to tell anybody about it. It's between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, that's a karama. The other type of supernatural thing is basically an istidraj. What is that? An istidraj is different because an istidraj basically means you're testing the person. The istidraj happens to evil people. Like who? Like a Dajjal. He will actually have supernatural powers. Supernatural powers where he would go into a city that we would refuse to believe in him. And he would then tell the earth, swallow up all your goods and your resources. And the earth just gulps up all the resources. People are trying to get to their resources, but they can't even get to their resources. Other groups of people, they would be in complete poverty. But then because they would believe in the Dajjal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them these powers, and he will basically order the earth to bring resources to these people, where these people will probably get water resources, fruits, vegetables, all the different produce, etc., would be available for them. This is al-istidraj. Not only that, but the Dajjal will even have powers to bring or make believe and manipulate people that he was capable of bringing people back to life. When in reality, he was actually using jinn to do some exorcism and bring people, make believe as if they were back to life, enter the body, and actually, how is that going to happen? How can such a thing happen? So these things are definitely supernatural. These things are definitely exceptional. They're not something that we would necessarily say, well, here's my scientific or intellectual explanation to how these things are going to happen. But these things are going to be things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will even give the Dajjal to challenge the people with, to test their iman. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that there was not a fitna, there was not a trial that at any time or any time in history that is going to be more dangerous than the fitna of a Dajjal. Now the Dajjal, he actually comes out from the east. Khorasan, Afghanistan, those areas, we don't really know, but towards from the east, and only lives for 40 days. 40 days only, where the first day is like a year. What does that mean? Does that mean 6 months daylight and 6 months night? Is he going to live in the Scandinavian countries? Where is he going to live? We don't really know. The Prophet ﷺ just said that he'll live for 40 days, and the first day is going to be like a year. The second day is going to be like a month. The third day is going to be like weeks, and then the rest of the days are going to be normal days. Well, what is rather interesting is that he will be traveling at massive speed. What is that? Is that going to be some kind of a technology that's going to be faster than airplanes of what we have today, where he's going to be capable in just a short period of time actually traveling very far distances in a matter of a couple of days, or probably travel the whole earth in really just within these 40 days. At the end of the day, is that it's going to become a fast news report, and where people in these 40 days and globally, internationally, everyone is going to be talking about this and is going to be believing in it. Dajjal will enter almost every city, every country, except 2 places. The first one is Mecca. The second one is Medina. What will happen in Medina? Listen to this. The scariest thing about Medina is that the Prophet ﷺ said that Dajjal will come but he will not enter Medina, but he will lay a curfew on Medina. The people in Medina will have the curfew for almost 3 months. What does a curfew mean? A curfew is when an army surrounds a place, and if anybody comes out of that city, they either surrender to the authority of that army, or they would basically not have the resources to continue living, whether food, water, or whatever is necessary for their existence. Guess what happens? The ones to fall for the manipulation for the Dajjal are, number one, the hypocrites, number two, the women. The women, their husbands, their fathers would tie them up to the beds, to the chairs. Please don't follow him. He's a liar. But they'll untie themselves and actually go and believe the Dajjal and go there. The husbands, they're like, he's a liar. Don't go for the narrative. But they will untie themselves and follow the Dajjal. Women, hypocrites, and Yahoo. Why women? And this is important. This is not an issue of, yeah, we're just hating women, but this is just to let women recognize, be careful from following narratives, and be careful from those that will use trends to manipulate your feelings about different things. There will be all these trends to make you feel, if you would do such a thing, you'll look pretty. Puff your lips, puff your whatever, put a piercing. It'll make you look beautiful. Well, that's a trend that they would use on women and on the communities in order to manipulate them to think about their appearance rather than think about their heart and focus on their heart. So be careful, ladies, from such trends. Those trends, if you easily are manipulated in such trends, you will be basically putting yourself at the start and the path of following trends of Dajjal.
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله